Okie dokie, we are live. Hello, everyone. Here we are again for another Mavens Do It Better podcast, where we interview extraordinary experts who bring a light to our world. And I should say light to our world. I don't know, you're going to say it better than I do. But I have Ryan Duguid, dear friend, colleague on today, who is, will you say world for us in your eyes?
World. Yeah, there
Thank
you go.
you. Perfect.
That's right. An extraordinary gentleman of the world.
Oh, music.
Others do it better than me, but you know, we'll try. We'll see how long we can keep it going for the duration.
Oh, I love it. Perfect. That's so good. So
my mum will listen in and say he's faking it. He doesn't do it like that anymore.
Oh, hey, Ryan's mom. Your son is awesome, by the way. So yay. Well, cool. Well, Ryan and I have known each other for a long, long time, worked together, played together at Microsoft and at various and sundry companies that we both have worked for. And he is one of my favorite people and has got a beautiful tech mind and is super creative and doing all kinds of things. So I just wanted to have you on and chit chat about kind of, we all are in the middle of the pandemic and but also
I shouldn't smile. It's a pandemic.
I know, it's like gosh, it's so bizarre. Yeah, so but I wanted to have you on because we've been trying to do this for a while, and so I'm excited. And I take it you're doing everything from home right now, yeah?
I am indeed. You know, we have we were the first and best in America here in Seattle, and you know, that I think led to us being the ones who went to stay at home. I know San Francisco technically did it first, but
Yeah.
at scale, people staying at home, companies, huge thanks to the major employers around here, you know, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook and the likes all went out early with working from home.
Yeah. Yep.
And schools went early and it's playing out, right? Much like California, you can see the results. There's still a long way to go, I think. But yeah, I'm doing my part. I do go out for a walk once a day with a family, go out for a 4-mile walk around the neighborhood, and we all stay like in separate 6 meters, or no, not 6, but 6 feet apart, 2 meters apart, for the metric folks. And it's kind of funny walking down the middle of the road when you're passing other people, eh? But yeah, it's, you know, it's a novel time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. How is it going with the kids at home? I mean, you deal with your kids at home a lot anyway, but how's the school stuff going?
Yeah, you know, I'll go officially on record with it. Like, I've got one kid who is, you know, geeking out in a big way about it, right? So he's a planner, a scheduler, and he's got it all mapped out, and he's doing the schoolwork, then the lacrosse wall ball, then the bass practice, then the singing lesson, then he's going for a 4-mile run, and he's doing all that. And I've got the other one who, you know, school's not his favorite pastime, I would say. So he's been resisting it a bit, but at the same time, he's been, you know, the skateboard, the scooter, the mountain bike, working on the balance, the tricks. He's out in the trampoline, backflip, front flip, misties, 360s. He's got trampoline skis. He built himself a trampoline skateboard. So he took a skateboard, he stripped the wheels off, he taped it all up, and he practices on that. And then he made his own skateboard. So he like got a block of wood, cut it out, drilled it out, and he's built his own skateboard and put the old wheels off the other one. So so they're both doing their thing, you know. But adjustment, like probably like everyone, the first couple of weeks is like a ring around us all day. Like, do you mind not doing that? Because, you know. And then of course for Emily's like, you jokers aren't supposed to be here during the day. I'm supposed to have peace and quiet, right?
Yep.
Fun and games.
Yeah, for sure. So we met, I don't even know how long ago.
2000 and bloody blah.
Yeah,
something.
2000 and something.
Something. 2008, I think.
Yeah.
12 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan was on the enterprise content management team at Microsoft.
I think I was the enterprise content management team at Microsoft. No, that's not true. Me, Evan Richmond, and Jean-Paul, right? Like,
Jean-Paul.
That was a tight combo. That was.
Yeah. You know who I actually talked to the other day, not too long ago, was Christian Finn.
Oh, I had beers with Christian Finn just before the COVID shutdown. First time we'd seen each other in a long, long time.
Wow. I think we
Yeah.
must have talked around the same time because that was same for us. So it was nice to see.
Yeah. He showed me pictures of his house burning down. That was
Oh
a bit
my goodness.
scary.
Crazy. Yeah, that was wild. I was like, what happened? I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Uh-huh.
No, I was like, that's just, yeah, absolutely bananas. But yeah, gosh. And that team, goodness, we did a lot of, so I worked for Ryan and helped him produce a lot of events at Microsoft where we went around to a lot of,
Aim and Arma.
yeah,
The
Arma.
records crew.
Yes, the
Yep.
records through third party stuff. It was like E 2.0, the Go Base
Mm.
conference.
Yeah. Oh
Goodness,
God, I forgot that one.
I'm trying to pull out. So at KM World,
Uh-huh.
um, AIM, which I was a board member on, and you've been part of that,
Almost a board member. They didn't
almost.
select me in the end. Almost.
I am.
Not that I'm bitter about it or anything, because I feel like I could have added some value there. But
I was not
hey,
happy.
you know who we should mention too, just because we're going through the crew, is Trisha Bush.
Yeah, absolutely. Trisha Bush, she's so great. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't talked to her in a long while as well, but Christian mentioned her, and I was like, yeah, and Justin Shandu.
Oh yeah, Mr. Chandu.
Talked
Yes.
to him forever. So yeah. So will you so you're a technology maven. You've been in and around technology, working at, working NIM Takes and Microsoft, and tell everybody about your humble start back in the day. Like, how about some origin story way back?
Humble start. I'm a technology person. Let's look sophisticated. I'll do this with my glasses for those who can see. No, I'll take those off for a bit. We'll put them back as we get into the
Or you
sophisticated
can
stuff.
rip
So
them off.
yeah, so let's do the who am I, right?
Yeah.
Origin story stuff. Because the funny accent that we're joking about, and I'll throw one in here for Alison as well. Chunky monkey, right?
Oh.
Now,
Okay.
so I'm from Scotland, as you can tell by the accent, and also because the accent will come and go, you'll be thinking he hasn't lived there his entire life, and so I've been around the world a little bit, and the the origin story is such that I grew up in Scotland and headed to New Zealand in my teenage years, and the biggest part of the origin story is my father, who would have been his 77th birthday in April if he was still with us, April 5th, so just a few days gone by.
Wow.
But he, most ballsy person I know in the world, right? In 1985, he decided that he was tired of Cold War Europe, and if you weren't living there, it'd be a hard thing to understand. And he had a small, family, 2 kids, and he wanted them to grow up and survive. And so he decided to get far away from it as possible and move us to New Zealand. And in this day and age, people are probably like, "Oh yes, New Zealand is there. New Zealand's fantastic. It's a flight's $2,000." Like in 1985, it wasn't quite that easy. And so much so that the plane had to stop in Hawaii on the way there because it didn't have enough fuel capacity to go all the way,
Wow.
from Los Angeles. And he took us there knowing he could never go back, or at least in his mind, like that was a one-way ticket back then. And he's a pretty modest guy. He's in the printing industry, blue-collar worker, and so it's not like it was an easy, highly skilled laborer that had a job. He worked for years to get us the ticket there. And that was a big game changer, for me, and it gave me a global perspective. It exposed me to different cultures, and I don't think I'd have traveled the world as much since. If it hadn't been for that, I might have just still been holed up in Edinburgh, looking at my lovely castle and thinking the world was magnificent. So that's sort of the cultural part of who I am. Family guy. I have a wonderful wife, Emily, 2 kids, Jackson and Andrew. 13 and 12-year-old, and I have an amazing set of friends like yourself. I like working in the software industry. I love product. I love trying to find ways to make the world a better place through the use of software, right? And by pastime, just come off it earlier, actually training on a wee bicycle, but I like cycling, mountain biking, road biking, and I love skiing. I'm a little gutted that the season's cut short right now. I had this epic season last year where I skied 55 days.
Wow.
I've never done anything like that in my life. And I was up to 41 and I was going strong and I was like, yes, no, shut down. So it's first world problem, that one is. And then, also a bit of a Pilates fan, which
A
is, you
little.
know, a little, not something everyone does. And I actually, you know, not that I've qualified out with the training hours, but I am a certified balanced body Pilates instructor as well. So that's the not work stuff. And then the work stuff is, you know, a bit of everything, but I'll pause there. You know, you should ask some questions.
No,
We should discuss some more stuff. But I
that's
think
great.
that's a bit of how I got to here. And
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in my 40s, right?
Me as
There you
well.
go.
Yeah. It's so, I love learning so much about friends and people that are awesome in my life. I'm always like, oh, what a nice story about your dad. Your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
Yes, my father.
yeah, well, and
I
then,
should show you. Watch this. I'll do a wee thing just because it's like videos and stuff. Here he is.
oh my goodness. Wait, you say something because the camera will go back to you.
The camera will go back to me now. Here we go. This is me and my dad, right? And I'm sporting at the moment. This beard is in homage to him, like that. So there you go.
Love it.
I think, you know, a lot of people do that. They're like, you look like your dad and stuff. And people are like, no. I'm actually quite proud. I think the older I get, the more I look like I'm probably like, that's okay. I'm happy with that. I like my dad, you know?
Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. So many people I know that I care about born on the 5th. It's funny of April.
Yep.
So yeah, that's cool. So I know obviously New Zealand. When did you start working for, what was the trajectory that brought you to Microsoft, and when did you start working at Microsoft?
Oh yeah. So Jesus, so short version, then with long version, because you sent me those magical questions, right? Somewhere in there you've got the turning points and, you know, what have you. So the long version will hit at that point, but the short version is someone gave me a very strong recommendation into Microsoft New Zealand at a time where I was thinking I'd lived in San Francisco for a couple of years, corner of Jackson Jones, Nob Hill, you know, the swanky part of town.
That's
and
right.
And right on the cable car, actually, so I know that ding really well. So we, you know, and Emily and I, we moved back to New Zealand, got married, and we kind of felt like we wanted, you know, we had more to explore. Happy to be back in New Zealand and hanging out with family, but we had more to do. And I was kind of the one holding things up, right? Because she worked for Hewlett Packard in San Francisco, and they were happy to bring her back when the time was right. And I was the guy that had just bounced around working in small New Zealand companies. And it's quite hard for those who are in America, don't quite understand. But if you haven't gone to a fancy American college and you haven't worked for a known company, it's actually hard to get into this. And so I figured I should do something about that. And lo and behold, a friend said, hey, there's this job at Microsoft. It's a good fit. What they call the TSP, various flavors of that, but technology solution provider. The rest of the world calls it a sales engineer, right? and I got in from noodling around with SharePoint and associated technologies. I had been a Microsoft supporter for a long time. My academic background and early career is much more Unix and Java based, but I'd made that switch. And so for me, it was a dream come true, like, you know, biggest software company in the world. And it was my ticket to go work in America again, which was kind of always the dream for me, you know, like that was sort of work for a major company, build software that's used by billions of people and have a big impact. And so I worked for them, and I had this genius idea that, you know, if I worked for them and I was really good and proved myself over 5 years, someone might want me in Redmond. And it turns out that 18 months later, someone did want me in Redmond, and lo and behold, it all went from there.
Yeah. Wow. And a mutual friend of ours, Chris Johnson,
That's the long version of the story. Chris Johnson.
Hey, Chris. Hey, CJ. Yeah, I know. So, but yeah, but you and he kind of had a trajectory together for a bit, and still do, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Probably for the rest of the time, I'd suggest. Yes, you know, he's the godfather of, you know, Jackson, my first child, and we're best man at each other's weddings. And you know, we met in 1995, right? So 25 years ago now, at the back of a lecture theatre in Victoria University in Wellington. And it turns out he and I were both kind of rejects who'd gone and done other things and come back around to deciding, you know, we wanted to do computer science and we had to study math as part of that. So there's a bunch of like, you know, first year nerdy types sitting up the front.
Yep.
Me and him sitting up the back. And, you know, he had this kind of style about him, and it's comical. Well, I wish I had a picture of it, because he had like this kind of scrappy old t-shirt. He's wearing these white pants made of material. I don't know what you call it in America. It's good. Call it terry toweling where I come from, but it's just like kind of, it's like those sheets you had as a kid with the kind of looped stuff.
Oh, terry cloth.
You know, terry cloth. Like terry cloth, right? It's like he had white terry cloth pants.
Wow.
And he had this satchel. It was a leather satchel made by a company called X23, and that was it was started by a guy who'd been in jail, and I guess that was X23 had something to do with his number or stamp or whatever. And
wow.
He'd made good with this leather goods company, and that was like this $450 bag. And I'm like, man, this guy's got chops. And we just got talking, and it went from there. And so I got him a job in a company that got him into a thing that got him to Microsoft, and he's the guy that pulled me into Microsoft. And then the comical part was he got the job up here in Seattle, and he headed on his way. He was actually traveling with Vicky right through South America to head up here. And by the time he got here, called me up, how's it going? I'm like, actually, I've got a job up there too. I'll see you in 6 weeks.
I didn't know that story. That's great.
Yeah. So.
Wow. Yeah. It's fun how we have friends that we carry each other along. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm fascinated by that, right? Yeah, like I always want to look for the points in life, like the defining moments. And then the reality is there's so many, you make trillions of choices, right, every day. Always look for the people and the moments in time where like, oh, if that hadn't happened, you know, and in both directions, right? Sometimes I like to look at how I've influenced other people's lives, and but things like that. So, you know, like I wouldn't be here if he hadn't, you know, found that opportunity and pulled me into it. And, you know, so it's, those sort of big shifts, like where that in life, who was behind those, it's always fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely, me as well. I love that. I mean, the sparks, right? It's like what takes you there. And I don't know. And sometimes like, I think it's cool to pinpoint them. And that's something I love talking about on the show as well with people. And I think it's also sometimes like the little things that we gloss over and we don't remember, but those actually have a huge trajectory on our lives sometimes too, even if they're small, you know? So, yeah. And we've worked together. Oh my gosh, we worked together for so long and so closely, you know, doing all those events and stuff. And then you worked for a long while at NIM Takes as well. Yeah. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah. So it's, I've just finished up 8 years at NIM Takes. It's quite a strange world for me, because, you know, it work to me. I go all in, and NIM Takes in particular, you know, the company, the brand, the product became a large part of my identity. I kind of felt as Brett and Brian moved on as the founders that in some part it was on me to carry, you know, forward, like almost like founder 2.0 or something like that. And so it's still a strange world for me. I've been out for just, you know, a few weeks now. And I find myself sending things to people like, hey, did you see this on TechCrunch, right? Or whatever. I'm like, why am I still looking at that? Like, you know, it was time for me to do something new. Why am I still looking at wacky workflow stuff, you know? But I think part of that is that, you know, NIM Takes was a really unique fit for me in part, you know, because I had before I went to NIM Takes, I had an idea, came about in a flight to Houston one time. And I had this idea for cloud workflow, right? Like the time was just right. This is like 2010 or something like that. SaaS is on the rise, and you know, and there's just this massive integration kind of problem coming, and not data point-to-point stuff, but how business entities, right? This is the best way I can describe it. And anyone out there has a better term, I'd love to hear it. But like business entities, so like, you know, people and customers and clients and projects and facilities and, you know, you name it, assets, whatever. Business entities have a life cycle, right? They're born, they live, and they die, and you need to manage that. And those entities, they're affected by so many different systems. They interact with so many different systems, and data moves around. People make decisions, and so I had this vision for this thing, and one option was go do it myself, and the other option was, hey, there's these guys at NIM Takes, right? Like Brett and Brian, who I'd met, it's an amazing company, and it's growing really well, and I think they need to go in this direction, so I'll shop it to them. And it turns out just you know, beautiful timing, right?
Yeah.
And so I went there, done that. But the driver behind that is like, I'm an efficiency geek, like you know, you
Yes,
just ask
you are.
anyone. Like, if you watched me, right? If you watched me in the morning in the kitchen, you'd be like, that's quite precise what he's doing there, right? Like minimum number of steps and how I can optimize everything, and, you know, grind the coffee while I get the milk, while I do the unload the dishwasher and things like that, and take a spoonful of oatmeal or porridge, where I come from, by the way. And so it's just a perfect fit. And so it's strange to get used to the idea of going to do something different, but I think we all need to do that from time to time. And after 8 years, you know, I felt like it was time for me to, you know, it's like the "we got this" Seattle thing, right? Like, I mean, the people at NIM Takes have got this, right? Alan and Neil and Eric is the CEO, and, you know, hundreds of engineers, like they know what they're doing now, and they know where they need to take it.
Yeah.
And I felt like, you know, it was time for me to go help some other crowd do something interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. And, you know, it's like, it's a lot of the old guard of like Brett and Brian and folks that, you know, came up and created companies, ISVs, independent software vendors, and all of that.
Such a weird term, that
I
one, but
know,
yes,
right?
software companies. Yep.
Yeah. And, you know, having kind of onboarded the first 60 back in 2001, and then sort of they were part of sort of the next role, you know, of folks that came in, and then, you know, eventually have often gone and done other things. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
with Hyperfish, and then, you know, the Live Tiles, and then, you know, people have different companies that they've spun off and everything. But it's cool also that we all kind of stay connected, even if we're not talking every day. You know, like we're all kind of like, oh, who's doing what and whatever, and you kind of ask people to go along to the next thing. And yeah, I think I love that you took a look at what you were doing and said, okay, it's time for something new, you know, and that's exciting. So kind of the in front of you is a path that hasn't been written yet, you
It's
know?
exciting and scary. It's funny that it's like, but see, here's the thing, right? I mean, this was part of the challenge with it. It's family, right? And you know, if you go and when you're long, so if I take my time at Microsoft and then Texas, I had that up to 15 years, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm in my, you know, 40s, and so it's a big chunk of my life hanging out with these people, and it's a double-edged sword, right? Because in part it's your safe, happy place, right? And I think this is something everybody needs to think through, and what drives them, motivates them. And then in part, you have other days where you're like, I can't just stay here forever, right? Like I went, you know, events are virtual and all now, but the last big physical one that I went to, you know, in Vegas, right? Which one is it? That's Ignite, right? Not until or Ignite, yeah. And no, which anyways, however,
Inspire was in Vegas.
WPC.
Inspire. Yes, WPC. Inspire.
Yeah, that's the one where us at NIM Takes generously gave them that conference name. So I was hanging out with Scott Jemison, right? And he and I went to one of the parties, and, you know, the Live Tiles guys, they were doing their band and everything. It was awesome. But I was sitting there and I was like, man, this is like 10 years almost to the date since SharePoint Conference 2009 there, right? And I'm like, it's the same people, and it's weirded me out a little bit. And I went back to my room, I was talking to, and Scott was coming down. He'd left and he's coming, he's like, oh, I'm going back. And neither of us got back there to start talking about stuff and kind of get to that point where, and this is one of your defining moments, right? Where we're both sort of like, it's probably time to be done with this SharePoint thing, right? Like there's, we've done our part, and there's other things we should probably go do now. And there's plenty of people there keeping the dream alive. And I like checking in on it from time to time. I like to see Jeremy posting about the, master data stuff being available in the Graph API. I'm like, thank God, like, Jesus, it's only taken 10 years, right? But but no, I need to put that in a, that's another part of my life, and it's time to go try something different.
Yeah. All right. Is there a sneak peek?
Is there a sneak peek? Nah. Stay tuned, Day.
Okay.
There's things brewing, and it's definitely going to be not Microsoft stuff in the traditional sense, I don't think. I mean, it's pretty hard to work anywhere these days. It's not using Azure in some capacity, right? But
that's true. Yeah.
But I think, like my days as a regional director and geek, I think that's sort of coming to an end now.
Yeah.
And really just getting focused on product. And as much as, I think my job as a product leader is always made easier by the fact that I'm technical.
Sure.
Not as much as I used to be, but I'm technical. I think it is time to just really focus on product. And the more time, like towards the end of my time at NIM Takes, the last couple of years, spent more and more time just really stepping back, right? I mean, for those who've followed me along the way, chief evangelist, right? Allowed me to step back and look and work kind of on the business as opposed to in it, and spend a lot of time looking at like how things go from, because all of us technical folks are you can build anything, right?
Yeah.
And many things are built that go nowhere. And I don't have time left in my life to build things that go nowhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the things I build have to have an impact. They have to be purposeful, meaningful. And to drive that, you really have to look at how you build it, how you take that to your product marketing team, how you work with your overall marketing team on the messaging and the positioning, and how it aligns to your brand. You have to work out how you drive sales readiness, how you get the sales team pumped up and out there pushing it. You've got to work on the high level, story in the market through the evangelism side of the business. There's pricing and packaging. There's so many aspects to it that I think early in my NIM Takes career was very, very product centric, right? Like right. Just get the right thing built the right way. And then, and then you sort of wake up at some point and go, oh yeah, all that other stuff, right? And you're lucky, or I was lucky anyway at NIM Takes, that there were people paying attention to that, right? But I really feel sort of the back half of my career at NIM Takes was really focused as a product leader on being more aggressive and driving that, as opposed to sort of inwardly focused on getting the right thing built. And I think it's a journey, right? Because we were re-platforming, we're building a whole new, NIM Takes used to ship DVDs, right? And we have to become a cloud provider, and so you have, right? And so you got to go inward for a while, but finding that point to make that shift is quite crucial.
Yeah. And you're also a really heavy duty marketer too.
Yeah.
You are. Like being someone that does that on a daily basis too, but like for someone who is very product centric, like your marketing brain is big, and I think we always have a lot of
Thank
fun.
you.
It is. Well,
Yeah. It's that actually, like working with people like yourself actually made that more apparent with time, right? Like it's actually part of the NIM Takes journey, right? Like along the way, for my sins, I took ownership of product marketing myself, and another great SharePoint guy from the past, Alberto Sutton.
Yeah.
At some point he and I had to divide and conquer, right? So we were both sort of doing the same thing with different parts of the product portfolio. And for anyone who's been in a company that's grown, I joined at 80 employees, I left at 500 and something.
Right.
And you have to change and adapt and evolve, right? And how you structure the business. And so we had, kind of the portfolio split.
Right.
He had workflow, I had forums and what have you.
Gotcha.
And eventually we sort of had to go, that's not going to scale. And so Alberto, you take marketing. Like truly like corporate, brand, events, you name it. And that's a lot. And I'm going to take product management, but I'm also going to take product marketing, because right now I really want to make sure the stories we tell are are on the money, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and not that we weren't great, but like there was definitely at that point where I'd kind of look at stuff and go, you know what, the story here is so good, right? And this is really where you want to be as a product person.
Yeah.
The story's so good, the product's so good that we don't need to make things up, right? Like we don't need fancy words and lots of copy and all that kind of thing. Like we just need to, like, NIM Takes, best workflow for SharePoint, delivered through forms and workflow and connectivity to other systems. And we were like, you know, get your messaging and positioning framework out and be tight.
Yeah.
And
and repeat it over and over again. Workflow for everyone, or workflow, you know, like all those different things over and over again. The big X, the whole thing. Like I remember when it came out, I was like, oh my God, that looks amazing, you know?
And everybody wants to do, it's funny with that stuff, because, you know, everybody's like, well, you know, I turn up at one point and go, why is the copy on the website different from the flyer at the conference? And it was just like someone felt like they had to create some different thing. And I'm like, no, just like create that, you know. And I tell you what, like I do quite a bit of advisory work these days as well, right? Like it's amazing how people fight the basics. Sit down, write a messaging and positioning framework, make it tight, make it truthful. And if it takes you more than a day, something's wrong, and come back and see me. And then everything emanates from that. And you say the same words over and over again. And you don't, you know, it's really, but I think the problem is, because in Microsoft, it's changed, right? Granted. But I mean, back in your day, my day, I mean, it was about content. Let's create more content, because that's what we're paid to do. You know, you're not paid to do content. You're paid to articulate the value proposition to the market such that they'll exchange their dollars for your benefits, right? And so I don't know. I don't think
I do have a big marketing brain, so there, you know, it's all about telling stories, right? Truthful.
Right.
What business problems you solve. Figure out what your messaging is. Don't make it too long. Repeat it over and over again. I mean,
you know the guys I'll do a shout out for them, right? Because they've helped me quite a bit along the way virtually, and actually some FaceTime as well. As a company called Drift, right? You'll all know them because it's that wee robot that pops up on websites everywhere.
Oh yeah.
David Cancel and Elias and Dave Gerhardt, who's moved on since, but to Privy, I think it is. But these guys really push that story. Is just like, tell stories, be authentic, know the problems you're solving. You know, old school product marketing, old school product management, and it, to me, is a breath of fresh air, right? And I'm like, be like that. You know, it's not hard, not rocket science. You can read all the books and should read all the books in the world, but then synthesize it and then just do your thing, right?
Yeah. I like the Donald Miller story brand stuff. I like his methodology, but it's the hero's journey. It's like Joseph Campbell. It's like, you know, Aristotle. You know what I mean? You know, like,
I've been telling the same story since the dawn of time, right?
I mean, kind of, you know, like they meet, they fall in love, they fight, but you know what I mean, like, or whatever. So it's things have gotten awfully complicated and noisy.
You know? I like the heroes and villains thing. I bring that up all the time, right? Like, you know, who's the villain here? Like, the villain is inefficient process. Okay. And our hero, the citizen developer, is setting out to slay the inefficient process. Right?
Absolutely.
How do we put them at the center of, you know, like that?
I know. I was like, did you ever, so the Little Golden books, you know those? Such a kid's book. So like that to me, you know, is like it's like kind of like that. It's like, okay, let's open this up and let's tell the story. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I don't know, or the choose your own adventure novels, I guess. But do you know those still have a copyright on that, and you're not allowed to say that phrase in anything?
Did you ever do the thing where you sort of have like 5 fingers in the book, right? Just in case you don't like where you get.
Totally. I was like, no, I didn't want that one. And then you go back. Oh yeah, absolutely. I loved that as a kid for sure. Yeah, you and I were similar in our generation as far as like how we grew up in very obviously different countries, but I think you and I have talked before about some of that stuff. Didn't you had a London stint too, right?
Yeah, let me give you the cities, right? Because I was making note of those earlier. So there's like I'll give you the actual lived and worked in, and then there's a couple other places that are sort of near and dear as well. So obviously Edinburgh, although that was kind of after the fact, right? Because I left there wasn't working there when I was 12, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But Edinburgh, worked with the Bank of Scotland there for a while when I was traveling, backpacking around. But Wellington down in New Zealand. From Wellington, I went to New York. Feel for the people in New York right now.
I know.
From New York, I went to London because, and here's that journey. It's quite funny. So my now wife, who wasn't then, she moved from Wellington to Rotterdam, and the whole New York hypothesis was it's closer than New Zealand, right? And she wasn't expecting me, by the way. She was probably not counting on me chasing around the world. And then once I'd kind of, got to New York and flown her over, we'd hung out for a little bit. Then I'm like, London's closer than New York. So I'm like, I told the guys I was working for, I'm like, I think we should have a London office, like that. And then from there to San Francisco, that was driven by Emily, right? She got the job with Hewlett Packard, and I was really happy to follow her and support her with that. Then back to Wellington, then up to Seattle, and but with the NIM Takes connection, I spent at least 2 of the last 8 years of my life in either Melbourne or Kuala Lumpur, and amazing friends, near and dear. That's a bummer. One of the biggest challenges of leaving NIM Takes is like it's going to be hard to see those people now, but sure. So I bounced around a wee bit, and I was supposed to be Seattle. It was supposed to be 3 years. It's been almost 13. Wow. So this is a nice place, Yeah,
it is. I lived there for 10 and went to college at UW. So yeah, my big hearts for Seattle and New York and London and all the places you mentioned. That And hey, Emily. Hey, Em.
Yeah, she's out somewhere. But I told them, I was like, Dad's recording. Oh. Don't come walking like past. It's like I'm surprised I haven't seen like small child walking past.
Yeah, I know, doing the yeah, it's like on all the calls right now. I welcome and love. Even before all of it, I'm like, you know what? Like, if a kid comes in or a dog comes in, or like I work from home. I've been working from home since 2006. So to me, it's like stuff happens. And sometimes a siren goes off when it goes by. And you know what? I'm not in a soundproof studio. I produce this myself. So with Annalise, of course. Shout out to Annalise. I don't produce it myself, but you know what I mean? Like, she's the producer, but I record them, so it's one of those things. It's like, you know what?
The dogs crack me up. I've had 2 dogs in my life. And my first one, I inherited the second one, but my first one, she and I went through the training. She's a border collie, right? And so I invested heavily, and as did my parents probably as well. But I've been super well-trained dog, you know? And well socialized around other dogs and not jumping up on everybody and licking their faces and barking. So I'm quite particular about that stuff. Where I'm like, I like my dogs well trained.
I do too.
Unwell trained dogs to me is not the dog's fault. So I tend to have issues with dog owners, not dogs. But when the barking thing cracks me up, so like the only time my dog was trained to bark, because my grandmother lived with us, right? And we were out in May, and my dog was trained to bark if someone came, within a certain proximity of the house, right, during the day, so my grandmother would know. And but that was about it. And so sometimes I'm like, who are these people? Can they not train their dog to stop barking? Like, this cracks me, that kind of. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I've got a dog in the background. But it's funny now, because now everybody's got a dog in the background or something, right? I'm like, yes, that's the new normal.
Absolutely, it certainly is. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of what else to ask you, but I think we've been talking for a really long time, and I'm so happy about it because I just needed to catch up with you anyway.
You can make cuts, right? Well, there's one I have to give you, right? Because we talked. Because we talked about my dad, right, and we talked about CJ, and I mentioned wife and kids and things. That was all good. But one of your questions, right, was about, so you talked about origin story and stuff. So probably worth the the quick version of the other person that most of it kind of originates around, right? So the connection I didn't make, I talked about living in San Francisco, but the connection there is my grandmother's sister moved there in 1940s, end of the war. Wow. And I come from quite a small family, right? Lots of only children and stuff. And so my grandmother's sister, and she raised 3 kids there. So I have 3 sort of second cousins, or however you want to pick it. Right. And I always had this affinity for the place. First time I visited there was 1981, when there was just orchards and stuff, right? She lived in Redwood City up in the hills,
Right.
and right near Joe, Montana. That was her claim to fame. And I grew up on 49ers swag and all that kind of thing. Now I'm a Seahawks person, by the way, but you know, however, I was okay with the 49ers being like that.
Yeah.
And on the way back from traveling around Europe, so I went in 1994 backpacking around and stuff, and I came back partly through studies and stopped in San Francisco and stayed with Cousin Will. And Cousin Will has been hippie artist, phenomenal guy with an incredible life story, and his partner Rebecca. And I stayed with them in Oakland in this old converted fire station. And I tell you what, it's like shady ass part of town. And we hung out, and they just like, you know, right place, right time, right people had gotten into the software world. As software world was recognizing user experience was a thing, and the artist could potentially help with that. And so he got himself this gig as creative director at Intuit, working on, you know, Quicken, and he was showing me all the stuff he was doing to try and make software easy to use. And he's like, you should get into software, and if you get into software, you could, you know, come back to San Francisco and I could probably help you out and stuff. And I was like, right, that's it. And I went back and I canceled a bunch of classes and I signed up for computer science, and I finished psychology degree, and I have 2 papers short of an arts degree in philosophy. But I did the computer science thing, and the coolest experience, because you know, we talk about those moments. The thing I love is if you can share that back later on, and it was incredible for me to be able to, you know, having moved up, and I kind of alluded to, you know, with the Microsoft thing, like, hey, you sort of put this in motion, but to get to a point in my life where, say, you know, because of that moment, that's what got me into software. That's what made me want to go work at Microsoft, to work on stuff that touched millions, hundreds of millions of people, that led me into NIM Takes, that led to, you know, fortuitous comes in terms of like my career and, you know, my financial well-being and stuff. And like, this is because of you, right? Like, they did this thing. And he, you know, he doesn't have kids. Oh, yeah, actually, that's not true. He has a kid. I was going to say he doesn't have kids. He has a kid. But you know, that's from a like whole other story. But you know, and so I feel like he's sort of like my surrogate dad, right? And hopefully he feels the same way about me. And so it's really rewarding to be able to say, like, much like I did with my dad before he passed as well, like, this wouldn't have happened without you making your choices in life. And so yeah, that's the origin story, the real origin story, the software thing.
Yeah. That was like, that's usually my last question, the spark question, and maybe you just answered it. Like, of who seats you in today, who you are, that moment, that person, that place, that thing, book, whatever. It sounds like Will is that for you in many ways.
Yeah.
You have more than one, but you know.
Cousin Will Tate, the artist, known as. And well, yeah, the interesting, like the other one is Emily, right? Because somewhere along the way, when I met her, and I was trying to impress her, right? And one night she says to me, and this is super early on when we're getting to know each other. We'd been working on our project together, and that had wrapped up. And so we were kind of hanging out a bit. She's like, what's your purpose? And I'm like, man, I better have a good answer to this, otherwise I'm hosed, you know? Because it's obviously pretty important to her. You know, she's working in a non-profit organization, trying to drive change in the world. And and here's me like, well, my purpose is kind of making money and stuff. It's a bit tragic, but actually got me, like, it took me back to my roots, right? Like, I was working just kind of billable software guy, right? And enjoying the benefits of that. And it got me back to the whole hypothesis, which was, I'm not the person that's out front in the world. I'm not like, I'm non-traditional leader. I'm not public profile guy. I don't go seeking that out. But I always felt like in the background I could drive change. And my feeling was with software is that if you could do something that just gave, you know, lots of people a little bit of time back, or made them a little happier or a little less frustrated, then you could have scalable impact on the world, right? And so I figure if your software hits like say NIM Takes, you know, 8,500 customers when I left, probably using the product, the platform to build things, and any of those customers and through the partner channel, you're going to get to millions of people, but they're building things that touch other people, right? And so So you're like, your impact is in the hundreds of millions. And if hundreds of millions of people every day go home happier, spend more time with their family, advance the cure for COVID, help people out who are starving in developing countries, you know, whatever it happens to be, whatever they do, if you can empower them to do what they do better, both at work and in their life, then you're on a winner, right? And
Yeah.
I feel privileged to be able to work in software to have that opportunity, I think.
Yeah.
And Emily pushed me towards that. That was kind of somewhat my answer back then, and it obviously worked, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Note to self. No, I mean, no, but seriously, what is your purpose it's a big one, and it's great that you had a good answer.
Yeah. Then I had to deliver on it, right? That was a problem.
I think you're doing all right there, Mr. Duguid.
Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, plus your name is Duguid. Duguid.
Oh, you can't do that. Duguid. Come on.
Yeah,
No,
come
you know well enough.
I know. I know.
You know, my dad's friend growing up was his name was Raymond Too Good, and so at school they were Do Good and Too Good, right? And yeah.
Wait. That's fantastic.
I think Raymond's still around, like he lives in South Africa or something like that. I don't know.
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, goodness. So there's I mean, there's always a chapter to be written, but for sure, a chapter to be written, and a chapter to be written for all of us in this bananas time we're in.
I know, hey. Well, we should do another one of these when you know, when I can talk more about what's being authored for the next phase and you know, the product journey along the way.
Yeah.
We can do that. We can do one of those. Not that I want to be the sort of the industry guy and all that thing, but I love talking product. And I reckon your audience, phenomenal group of people, you know, there could be some good conversations there, and you know enough folks to get on to give you different flavors of that. And I think, to me, the world needs product, good product management, and it needs it now. And the more, you know, those of us who've been fortunate doing it can contribute back to like the next generation and stuff, the better, right? So maybe that's our next one.
Yeah. All right. 100%. I love it. Great idea.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on. And
thanks for having me. Left it far too long to do this.
Yeah, I know. And being such a great friend, you and Emily, and love to the boys as well. So yeah.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Take care. Be safe.
Yeah.
Stay at home.
Wash the hands, all that stuff.
Wash your hands. 20 seconds. Happy birthday to me.
Oh, I know. My goodness. Yeah. Anyway, so yes. So I was like, I forgot we were on the podcast for a second. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. And another thing. One more thing only. Single ping, Ryan. Yes, there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, darling. Appreciate it. So,
all right. Take care.
Awesome. Everybody, that has been another episode of the Mavens Do It Better podcast with Mr. Ryan Duguid. And here's to another big, beautiful day on the blue spinning sphere. And here's to a safer day and a better day for all of us coming soon. So thank you. Bye, everybody. And